It's tutorial time. Welcome back to the Wylder tutorial, and today we're going to be doing the dry shaping. And if you haven't caught up to this part, check out the previous tutorials, but right now we are going to be shaping. So let's get right to it. All right, so what are we going to be covering in this tutorial? Well, we still have these to technically collapse outwards, which I'll roughly show how to do. We've got the legs to shape out, the torso, the fingers, and the sword, as well as the helmet. Now, we won't be able to do all of it. We also have like the shoulders and the crossbow, and then maybe a little bit of the scarf. But we're going to basically get a lot of these structures going, and we'll go from there. Now, one thing to keep track of is I'm going to be changing the shaping a little bit on this version versus the one I just showed. So if we take a look at the actual model, I have the little dagger down here. Now, this is because I was really trying to mimic the game character, but I think we can do some cooler structures if we don't do that dagger. So that's going to be using some of these flaps for just shaping out the armor. So that's just like a little disclaimer. And if you do want to do this anyways, all you really are doing is squishing this into the shape of a dagger, like literally just squishing it. So I don't think it's a very good, structure. I just did it to do it. But here we're just going to be folding to actually make this look good and to teach. So yeah, like hopefully you're okay with that, right? Again, if you really want the sword, just mush it into place. That's all it really is. There's no secret folding or anything to that. It's just that. All right. And I think that's it for the most part for the difference. Everything else should relatively be the same, and we'll get the folding. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is let's tackle the helmet. Now, we're not going to be able to do all of it, but I very much free shaped the helmet quite a bit. So because it's a little bit tricky, let's just get that out of the way. Now, before we do the helmet, I'm just going to remind you of these layers. We're just going to keep track of them. We have bottom one, we have two more on top. We've got this big triangle, and then we got some down here. Now you can see I've already started to do this, but what you are going to want to do is actually fold a rabbit ear. So we're going to valley fold from this corner to the center and the center out to there, right? And I'm just grabbing these layers here, folding it in half like this as a rabbit ear. This is going to help define the neck before we start shaping out the helmet. And that makes it a little easier to wrap the helmet around the head. Right, so it's like that. Now for the arms, I'm actually going to be swinging out the arms like this. And notice that I've also included these swinging out to the side. Again, this is to help just define the neck area like this, and it's going to set our shoulders more into place to be shaped. So that is how that works. Now, on the other side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add little mountain folds. So I'm taking my thumb and I'm just creasing over like this. And on this side, it's just like adding the mountain fold here. So I'm using my index finger and pushing up like that. And this will, again, help us just shape the neck. I've done this in many of my other designs. It's kind of like that. And that already starts rounding out the head correctly. And then the last thing is with this flap, which we'll monitor later, but we are going to insert that into that reverse fold we just did. And we'll use that to cover up later. That'll probably be more into wet shaping. We don't have to worry about that too much. But essentially, it's because this flap is this part of the helmet, right? And so we just need to keep track of that. Okay, we have that out of the way. Our arms are to the side. Let me actually grab a clip just to hold the neck in place while we do this. Just because I think it'll be, maybe it'll be easier to show. We might have to remove this clip every now and then, but we'll see. Okay, so this is the bottom of our helmet. And you notice there's like a gap in between the bottom of the helmet and the top of the helmet. And that is actually made by the middle flap up here. So this is actually going to go inside these layers, but a little bit on both sides to create that. So I'm going to show you how to do that. It's a little bit tricky, a little bit freehand, but before we do that, I'm going to define the tops of our helmet. So see how the top of the helmet, there's like a little thing sticking up here. We're going to do that by looking on the inside, the top. All right, so we got the triangle flap, we have this, and I am just going to reverse fold this corner up a little bit, and you just kind of want a triangle to be poking out. And it doesn't quite matter how much of a triangle, you just want to match it on both sides. Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. That should be good for now. I'm going to try to match it on the other side. Something like that, right? Not exact, but close enough. Okay, so we've got that in place. Now we need to add that, ridge on the inside. And what we're going to do is I'm going to grab the bottom and I'm going to grab the top. I'm just going to open a little bit like this so that we can pop up and pop open that layer. And we're kind of just pushing it in, but we're not going all the way. And we have this line right here, and I'm going to try to convert that into a mountain fold. And that is going to be the, where the eye slit in the helmet is. So try to make that a mountain like this. Right? We're going to pleat this down a little bit. Like that. And now we still have like a bit of a mess over here. And so with that side, we are going to push that underneath over here and basically turn this bottom area, which was a valley, into a mountain now. And that is going to pleat on top. Like this. And it's okay if in this area it gets a little bit messy. You just want to keep the shape of the bottom intact, because we're going to, fold out the sides and it'll be okay. Right, like this. For some reason, I'm getting like too much on this side. I think it's because this needs to pleat more up here. There you go. All right, so now we have the start of that gap in there. Now from here, we kind of need to thin this side out, right? So the helmet is more like this, right? And so what I'm going to do is just start mountain folding along this grid here, like this. Right, so I'm mountain folding like that. And then I'm going to swivel this in. Like that, right? you can kind of see how this is forming. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Like this. And then you're going to want to still have that face shape. So let me take this clip out. And so that is caused by needing an extra gap in there. And because it's not like super defined, we kind of have to stretch out a little bit like this. So I'm kind of pushing in this direction, and it changes some of these creases like a little bit. And don't lose that swivel. Right, but you can kind of see how it's starting to define this shape for the helmet. Yeah. So this and that. And we want this to be sticking out a little bit more than the other one. And that's okay. Now, because we had this kind of swivel, the top one, in order to get this over the helmet a little bit more, it's going to kind of change where the mountain fold is. And it's going to thin it this way a little bit. But that's okay, because it needs to kind of be thin anyways. But by doing that, it's also going to help pull out that layer to kind of match the top bit here. So you can see how I'm kind of pulling it into that shape. Right, so see how it got thinner like that. And by doing that, it allows it to kind of match and come forward a little bit. For the bottom, try not to lose the little winglets up here. Right, so now you can see it's kind of like this. Right. And with this, you might have to fidget quite a bit with it to get it, you know, exactly how you want it. So don't expect to get this on the first try. It's going to take quite a bit, but once we get to the wet shaping, that's where we're really going to solidify everything. But you're basically going to play around with that shape until you think it looks good. Or basically, yeah. Or I guess until you're happy with it. You know, do your best to make it look good. And what I would do is either look at reference images of Wylder to try to really mimic what the helmet looks like. Or you can at least mimic my original photo and get close to that if you want to base it off the origami version. Something like this. And now you'll notice there's like a gap in here. And that is where the rest of the head is filled. Now we're going to mostly do that part in the wet shaping tutorial. But essentially we will be opening up this area and using that as like a 3D wraparound here to like close up the top of the head and then to have the rest of the helmet defined. So there's not too much to worry about there yet because we kind of need to rely on the wet shaping and the methyl cellulose so that we can open this up and have it be 3D enough. You know, I think I have to go inside here, inside the head, and like puff it up, right, like this. But for now, you can, you know, kind of get the idea that you'll probably have to open up the model a little bit and get that 3D. But again, we're going to wait until later to finish the rest of that. So at least if you're here, this is good enough for now. And then once again, we can probably just like work on tucking this section in to make the winglet areas look larger. And then I think, again, in the wet shaping, what we're going to do is, right now the jaw is too big over here, right? So I'm going to valley fold with some tweezers to make it thinner. But yeah, we'll wait for doing all that proportions later. But roughly that's the structure. Okay, so it's okay if it's not staying because we're going to do the rest. But that's the head. All right, so the head was a little tricky. We're going to move on to something a little bit more regular, and that is going to be starting off with the legs. So let's start off with this leg, this right leg. And it's pretty similar to things I've done in the past. What we're going to do is widen this flap like this, and we're going to squash the corner up like this, and it should be pretty natural. Just like that. And while we're at it with the squash, let's valley fold down for now, like this. Now we're not done yet down here. I am going to unwrap up top and be careful here not to rip it. If it's feeling a little tight, just unfold more so you can unwrap that layer. Put it back, and I'm going to unwrap up till the top over here. Right, so I unwrapped past these two layers, but not past this guy up here. And I think that is good enough. Now let's refold everything. Right, so now it looks like something like this. Something like that. All right, and we are actually going to unwrap one more layer, but in order to do that, I'm going to valley fold this layer over, and we're going to need to squash fold the ridge here. Like this. And again, we're wrapping another layer around. To the same point. And that's going to make the legs a little bit easier to shape because we've kind of distributed the layers a bit more evenly. All right, so now that we're here, what we're going to do is some unsinks. So because we've done the squash fold, and I've had this in things like my samurais, is we're going to pull out that corner. And using the creases, right, we unsink that corner here. And you can actually unsink the corner at the very bottom too. Or what I mostly just do is push it through the other side. It's kind of more like a closed sink, or you can treat it as an unsink. Depends what you find your paper to be easier to accomplish. Something like this. But now what we're going to do is I'm going to stretch this a little bit more. So it's kind of like we're doing the ridge squash thing. And if you don't know how to do this, okay, maybe I should explain what I did. But I think a lot of people know how to do this. If you don't know how to do that, let me show it on the other side. So again, to repeat, we can do this maybe a little bit faster. Is we're unwrapping 2 layers, right? So that means we're going to need to squash fold both sides. So I'm going to squash fold this one first, right? This ridge, and then we've got this one on top. And in this case, I'm going to valley fold the tip forward. Okay, so now we have our layers that we need to unwrap. And the unwrap will terminate at the hinge up here. So once it's up to here, just valley folds down. Just like the other side. So now we're going to do the unsync. So unsync this one and unsync the bottom corner. And depending on your paper, this will be easier or harder. This one's a little bit thin, so it requires a little bit more finesse. And this is also shout out to Paper Tree. I will have the paper I'm using linked down in the description if you're interested. Already recommended some paper by Paper Tree in the first video. So go check that out, but just shout out again for them sending me this awesome paper. So far it's working really nicely for the shaping of this model. Okay, so we've done the squashes, we've done the unsyncs. We're going to do the ridge squash stretch. So basically, I am making this tip longer by stretching to consume this point. And normally you can just like actually just pull it and it'll open up. But because we're on the corner, to make it a little bit easier, if we unfold a little bit, you can see where I'm creating a new mountain fold. So I'm creating a mountain fold from the corner of where this little tip is. So that corner to the corner where the other small tip was. So if I fold this back up, basically I'm making a mountain fold from there to here, but when the paper is unfolded a little bit, so it can actually just make a straight line. So we can just open it up slightly. I'm going to make that mountain fold like this. And in order for the side over here to fold flat, it's actually going to fold an angle bisector to that same corner. So basically I'm just lining up the edge formed at that corner. And you'll feel it. It wants to naturally fold here like this. And it'll make that new crease. But we also have to do it on the other side in order for it to be flat. So once again, from this corner to this corner down here. Right? So now you can see it's lining up. And then we need the angle bisector right there. And it's going to meet the rest of the creases. So angle bisector meets up with the rest of the creases. And lies flat. Right? Okay, so that we have for the legs. These will turn into the shoes. I know it's like a little bit thin here because of the paper, but When we do, this becomes kind of part of the waistcoat. We have some extra details here. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do with this. It might change. I left them like this so we can have like a ton of details, but yeah, it might layer down. Like I might even just stretch out the layer this way, so that it's more like a cascading pleat. We kind of have some options to change where these pleat arrangements are. Like, for example, like this, right? We'll see. We'll see what we want it to look like. Yeah, maybe we'll do something like this and go with the flow. Okay, let's actually just do that. Okay, so what I just did, I'm going to show it on the other side, is right now we have these two 1-unit flaps that are like on top of each other. I want to move this flap down one. In order to do that, I just need to find where it's being folded. So I have to open up some of these layers here. And you can see we've got these creases like this and like this. Now, instead of it folding together, I'm gonna push open from the other side along the grid, and you can see how this now becomes mountain fold. And I can mountain fold along the top of it like that, and it essentially shifts the pleat down 1 unit. So we just moved the structure down one. And if you can't fold it exactly, just get as close as you can and you'll be chilling. Yeah, this should be fine. And I think with this, we can do something a little fancy. Okay, so this is, I'm going to show some tech just for an added detail. We're going to see if this works for fun. Again, you can kind of do whatever you want. You can even pleat these further and squash them and probably get like a scale pattern. But an easy little pattern I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the top layer like this, and I'm just going to valley fold it about a third of the way so that we have it basically in the center between our two edges here. Like this. And we're going to go all the way up the leg. We're not going to go all the way down the leg, but we're going to go up the leg. Just try to have it relatively even. And this will naturally terminate towards the top. So it'll kind of fold itself out like that. That's okay. Now for the rest of it, we aren't going to have it on this bottom one. So you can push the swivel fold in as we close that pleat. So it looks like that. It's just a little swivel fold. Just like this. And now we have kind of a more interesting distinction between these top ones and the bottom ones, and we can add more details later if we want by using that middle one. So it just adds a little bit more interesting shape. Let's show that on the other side really quick. So I'm just going to take this internal layer, fold it about a third through the center. Like that. A third, and then I'm going to go up the leg. It's about the same. For the top of the leg, this pleat, it's going to make like a little diagonal towards the top like this. You'll feel it naturally want to collapse like that once you start folding it back together. And then for this bottom one, you can actually see it starting to form automatically. I'm basically terminating it in underneath the pleat with this swivel fold. Like that. And there we have it. Some little leg armor details to start off with. All right, let's migrate a little bit upwards. We did a lot of structural things. We're going to take a quick break by doing some easy things. And that is with starting on these hands. So these hands are pretty simple. We don't have to do the sync folds. You can if you want to, but I'm going to show how to not do that. Basically what we're going to do is just valley fold each corner down. So like this, just going to valley fold the bisector like this. Now I'm going to do the next one, but after I fold it, so I folded it right on top of the other layer. Now I just want to put the layer inside like this, right? So that way each one is stacked on its own. So I'll show another example. I'm going to do another one like this. And it's on top, but now I'm going to place it inside its own layer. Got one more, I think, one or two more. So one more here. And then the next one is actually part of the same thing. So you folded that. Fold that inside here. And this one's actually connected to the same finger. So yeah, you can just valley fold it down exact same way. Right. Okay. So then we're going to go to this side. Now we have the sword swiveled. I'm going to have to unswivel it for a bit just so I can do this. So I've just unswiveled the sword and we're basically going to repeat on this side. And by doing the fingers in this way, we'll be able to separate them without having to do the sync folds. And in my opinion, these actually kind of hold in place a little bit easier and are slightly easier to shape into the grip around a sword. And it's okay if it's not like super accurate. I am not being very, precise here. I'm just kind of folding through. I'm just making sure it's hitting the tips correctly. It's not like a true bisector, right? So you can see that it's okay. But this is totally fine because we're going to be spreading the hands out anyways. So it's not supposed to be perfect. Otherwise it'll look like claws. And then this last one just valley folds inside this pocket. Right. And I believe this is actually going to become our thumb. But okay, so now let's rotate our sword back. We're going to have a little bit of extra layers in the joint that you might feel, and that's okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to valley fold here. We do have a flap over here. We're not going to mess with that for now, but we're going to take the next one, and this should be our thumb, and we're going to pull it. This is our thumb. Okay, let's not do that yet. Maybe that's not our thumb. Maybe our thumb is actually back there. So let me put this back. Okay. I've refolded it. I think these are just our fingers. So what you should do first, I guess, is count your fingertips. See if you have 4 or 5. I think we'll have 5. Okay, so we have 5. Oh, so that was our thumb. Okay. So for our thumb, we can just pull it open and it's going to stick out at 90 degrees like this. Right? So I just kind of dragged and then squeezed. And then what you're going to do next is drag and squeeze the next finger, but just not as far. It's just going to go a little small distance just so you can get the start of the finger separation like this. I'm going to do the next one. Right. And you don't want to rip your fingers. So just be very gentle. One more here. And the pinky will be pretty thin because it's on the edge. It'll be right here. So I'll be okay. And that's our fingers. And we'll leave it like that for now because we'll have to do the rest of the sword in a bit. But shouldn't be too bad. Okay, so now we've done that set of fingers. We've actually collapsed the other side of the fingers already. So we can see what we want to do next. All right, so we are going to take a look at the torso and we're going to get some of these details. Now, I don't exactly remember what I did, but I think I know roughly what I did. So I'm going to show you and hopefully it works. Now, the flap we are using is this 2-unit flap. It's in between the 1-unit flap and the 2-unit flap up towards the top. So make sure you don't use this one. This is for the scarf. We're looking at this one, okay? Very important, this one. And what you're gonna be looking for is if I open inside, we see we have the layers here that formed a point, right? The ridge. I am going to very gently pull that layer out. And the way I'm pulling it out is so that, right, it leads up to the grid and makes just like a valley fold in here. And it's not going to stick out much right now, but you're just going to kind of crease that into place. So it's there. But now we are actually going to grab this whole thing. So this whole layer here and do the same type of pull out and valley fold down, right? So don't change any of the grid lines. It's just going to pull this whole thing out like that. And your torso might be twisting a little bit for now. We're going to fix that. Don't worry. It's going to look something like this. If it doesn't look exactly like it, that's okay. But this is going to help widen out that chest plate. And then to add a little detail, what we're going to do is we're going to take the top layer like this, and I'm just going to valley fold up to like, you know, around halfway between the center and the edge. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to valley, but at an angle. So I can start to push this into a squash fold. Right? So something like this. And it's going to crease this side a little bit too on the edge here. Like that. And that's okay. Just press it down. Right? It doesn't really matter where this is. Eventually, we're just going to mirror it to the other side. But the important part now is, you see where we have the grid line right here? We're going to mountain fold on that grid line like this. And that's going to help us get this to lay back flat. It's because by valley folding on it, we can then take the extra bits that are stuck out here and kind of crimp them downwards into the side. It's not going to be too flat, right? It's going to be kind of to the side. And this is going to help us cover our torso like that. And then likely what's going to happen is there's going to be a small valley fold that forms here to get this to kind of lay flat. Something like this. Now, obviously we haven't done the other side yet, but it's going to create something that's like this. And we can make this a little bit nicer later once we, you know, actually fold it out to 3D. Maybe it folds on top instead of to the side, or it tucks in the layer a little bit so it looks a bit more clean. But this will just help go around the side. And if I show you what it looks like on our finished model, see, it looks like this, where it's wrapping around the side a little bit. We've got this whole structure. And in this case, it's not really folded flat. It's actually used to kind of add, like make the chest pop out, because we don't want the chest to be sunken, right? We want it to be more popped out because it's sort of armor. So that'll add some more 3D once we get to the wet shaping. And by having that little valley fold there, that's what's going to enable us to do that. Okay, so now let's do that on the other side very quickly. So we're going to first look for this crease here that we can pull out. And mine's a little bit messy, so it's like already kind of pulled out. But we're going to try to make it a little bit cleaner here. There we go. We're going to pull it out and get those valley folds for where it sticks out. Then we're going to pull the next layer out. You'll notice that we don't have as many layers on this side, and that is because of the transition we did before. Again, totally fine. And then from here, we're still going to try to get that reverse fold. It's going to look slightly different. It's going to be a little bit more squashed, but try to mimic it as best as you can by doing the valley fold about to there. And squash folding the layer. Now the squash fold is going to be a little bit harder than the other side, but you just want to try to match it as close as you can to that shape. Not going to be perfect, but again, that's okay. Try to get it as close as you can. I'm going to try to make mine a little bit cleaner. Maybe I will not pull out as much of the flap, so it'll kind of be similar to the other side. As you can see, again, I don't really remember how I did this step. I kind of shape with just go with the flow. Okay, this looks a little bit easier to squash fold. Okay, just try to match it with the other side. And then now we can gently elongate. And pleat this down. Fold everything back up. Just like that. And we have the top of the torso shaped like this, folded. Now, the underside is actually pretty easy. These will basically, these little flaps right here, these will basically also help us round out the body. So they are going to be like this, and it's going to add this little gap in the center, which the top part will fold over and kind of rest on top of like this, right? And again, we'll set this all in once we get to the wet shaping, but that basically covers that area. And then we have this like little diamond shape down here, which we'll try to make it a little bit more cleaner by just pushing some of these layers out of the way. And that is essentially that. Now you can see the top of the armor kind of gets close to touching where that top of the diamond is, right? So that's once we start compressing all the layers, it's going to be somewhere around here, which is pretty close to where the diamond is. This one's a little bit lower of a diamond, so it might not be exactly there, but that's okay. Something like this, right? And then that's where our neck is, and our waist is down here. For now, let's take these flaps and just kind of widen them out to the side like this, just so we know that they are going to be for shaping the waist later. Right, so we have these flaps wider. We've got this, which we can shape into, you know, the battle waistcoat. We've got our thigh armor. These will be our knee and leg and shin armor. And this will collapse down over everything and become part of the scarf. And then in this back, we might do this next. We're going to fold this out into like a wider waistcoat so that I can wrap in the back like this. All right, so the next thing we're going to work on is the back waistcoat. And you see that I already have one done because I needed to remind myself how to actually fold it so I can show everyone. But you can see that we are making it pretty wide and then it transitions outwards. And we also have like this little middle area, and basically that will help us, you know, shape it and make it look round. But let's go ahead and get started. So the most important part here is just to keep track of how many layers we are unfolding to make it wide enough. So we can first start by looking at this side because they're symmetrical. We can notice that on this side, we've basically unfolded until there's only one layer on top of our structure here that creates that flap, right? So we can at least start there. So let's look at this. Don't forget we have these two flaps here. And I am going to look for that layer, right? So just one layer above that structure. And if I just start to unfold there, right now I found this layer here. And so let's unfold, and we're going to unfold past the flaps like this. And we can kind of get it started just like so. Right, now that we're here, we need to unfold, but we are unwrapping a layer underneath so that we can get this whole orientation, right? So I am going to reach under here, and if I were to just like, you know, unwrap from here, you'll notice that, oh, now it's flat. I've lost, you know, a layer. It's not a layer that's tucked into there. So we need to keep that one mountain folded and unfold a different one. So let's unfold here like this, and then right along here, right? So we count two. We're going to keep this mountain valley in place. So let's refold that. There we go. So I folded that back inside, right? So we have it in there. But now we started going wider, and I just need to unwrap this top layer up here, which is not the most edge one. There's like one more that's wrapped under here, but we're going to keep that folded as well. And now we have the structure we want. And so let's unfold here. I'm going to make sure that we have a mountain fold where the top of the 1 unit flaps are. Just like this. All right, so you can see how the structure, we basically have a pleat on each side running between them. And then on top of our 1 unit flap here, just make sure that it's a mountain fold. All right, so now to transition these out, let's start with the bottom one. And we have the 1 unit flap here. We have our leg at the bottom right there. And if we look at the other side, we can see how it's basically like a valley fold right along the bottom. And it kind of starts an Elias stretch like this. So if I hold that in this orientation, we're going to want our pleat to be faced this way. And in order to transition it out, we need to start an Elias stretch here. So right over here, this is going to be a valley fold like that. Right? So pay attention to where I am creating that. We have our valley fold that goes up in between like this. And then from here, it's just kind of an Elias stretch down. Right? So the rest should kind of be pretty easy to make sense like this. Kind of just follows all the way down like this. And that closes that side up. Now on the top, we've got our flap here. And if we look at the other side, it's a little bit different. So we actually have, this is our mountain fold for the flap, and it's pointing towards like the head, right? So when you look at this, we have the mountain fold here, and on this side, it's going to be pointing towards the head. And then along here, we need to make a mountain fold. So it's 2 grid units up from the bottom here, right there, and it goes across 2 units. This mountain fold goes across 2, like this. 1, 2. And then it makes the Elias stretch structure with this side in order to close. But you may be wondering, you know, okay, now what do you do with this side? Well, this side now goes to the corner here. It's kind of a bisector like this. So we're going to make a new valley fold from this corner and angle bisector like that. And that will allow the other side to lay flat. And you'll notice that that valley fold will pop a little bit over where our grid is, and that's okay, just like that. And that enables it to lie flat as well. So now we've got both done like this. Now, the last thing to do is add the little divider thing in between these pleats here, right? So you can see right now it's flat, but on this side we have like that little opening. And the opening is basically done by pushing that layer that's in between down. And if you look on the inside, it actually kind of looks like an inverted water bomb. So you can think of it like that. Or if you're familiar with doing, you know, level shifters or anything of the sort, you can think of it that way too. The way I like to fold this is I just take the edge here and I act like I'm sync folding just this part down. And I'm going to crease lightly because I'm not actually sync folding it down, but it would be like, you know, sync folding would be like this. And in order to do that, it's going to stretch along the inside of this layer, basically a mountain fold here, right? Like this. Right, so we're going to act like we're doing this. And if you need to, you can just do the whole squash fold. It's along the grid line, so it doesn't matter too much if you crease down, but I'm going to try not to crease down on that. But at least I'll crease down in this area. So that's that half. Now the other half, all we have to do is push the part we sunk down back up, except when we look on the inside, we're going to leave that inner layer sink folded, and we're just going to raise up the top like that, right? And that creates the other side. And it's easiest done when you're, poking from underneath as well in order to get your creases aligned. And what might happen to you is you might start to get it slanted at a gap. And actually, I think it's better to have like a little gap forming, so it's more like it's spread like clothing. You don't really want it to be close, tight, because it kind of messes with the effect, right? So you can see on this one, I have a big gap. This one's also got a little gap. And that just is going to help us when we're going to shape, because it's going to basically be like this, and it's going to help shape around the model, right? So even for now, if you want, you can kind of, doesn't really lock, but you can kind of hold them together like this, right? And that would be our back waistcoat. And that's how you unfold, or that's how you fold that section out. Okay, so let's move on. I think we can do the arm-mounted crossbow. Now, when we're folding this, and because of the game character, it's not exactly going to look like a crossbow, right? Let's take a look. All it really is like an extra armor piece sitting on top of his wrist. But the illusion that it's like sitting on top of his wrist or arm, even though it doesn't really look like a launcher or anything, it just kind of looks cool, right? So there's no like super particular shaping for this, but I'll show you roughly what I think I did. And if you want to customize it yourself, by all means you can. All right, so what we're going to do is, here is the flap. There's our fingers. And let's valley fold it towards the shoulder. And then valley fold up like this, right? So essentially, it's going to be like that kind of, and how it's sitting. And so we're going to open up these layers inside here a little bit. So there should be a long 2-unit flap on each side, but the one in front will have this, where there's 2 small flaps here. All right, so make sure that that is the one that's pointing towards the hand. And right, so I still have that reverse fold, and then basically I'm kind of mountain folding in here where before it was a valley fold. And once I have that mountain folded down, right, you can kind of see that it's like sitting on top of the arm like this, right? And maybe I'll just smush it more into the middle of the arm a little bit like this. And just angle it kind of like that. The next thing I'm going to do is with the tip over here, I'm going to valley fold it down like that. And then I am going to fold the tip to where we just folded from, like this. So kind of the center of this diamond, like that. Let's zoom in for this part. And from here, I'm going to spread sink or spread squash this. So just reach in between the layer. Like this. And then squash along the pre-creases we made. It's a little bit weird because it's not exactly flat, but that's okay. Try to make it relatively precise. It doesn't have to be like a perfect square, just make sure that it looks symmetrical for the left and right sides. something like that. Just adding like a little bit of texture to the launcher. And then once we have that done, we are going to add some valley folds using the edge a little bit. So I'm going to show with my thumb like roughly where I'm going to have this valley fold, but you'll notice that it's kind of fighting us on the bottom here. And so one thing I found you can do is there's 2 layers at this tip, and I can push some of the layers behind like that. So I'll show it again. It's normally seen like this, but instead I'm going to push it inside the other layer there. Let's try that on this side. All right, so it's more just rearranging the layers like that. And that gives me a little bit more freedom to valley fold this up. And where I'm valley folding is it'll be a little bit above the edge here. And let's try to match it on the other side. And with the other side, you can see that it kind of squashes in a little bit like this. Totally fine. Just squash to whatever feels natural. Same thing on this side. Is it can almost swivel this flap to make it a little bit thinner here. Like this. So basically I was able to take this layer and fold it in half, and then the bottom swivels out. So then it looks a little bit thinner. And then now we are going to try to tuck these, so this bottom section up a little bit. And you can either swivel it kind of in the same way. So up like this. Or if you just want to valley fold it somehow, it's totally fine too. Go to the other side. Valley fold this up. Right, so now we have like a much bigger gap in the arm from where the crossbow started, which is nice. It's more separated and defined. I think what I can even do is on this section is I can try to valley fold this in to get it thinner. Yeah, there you go. And it's okay if it looks a little bit messy because ideally we're just going to be looking at it from the top. And speaking of which, let's now look at it from the top, right? We have this whole thing going on. And then what I did on my original fold is I did like a little reverse fold at this tip. So we have like the crease here, and I just reverse fold like this. Right, like that. And then I add like a tiny mountain fold on the edge here, which will kind of go towards the tip. And this can be like right at the edge or like a little bit below the edge. Right, and then you can spread it out a little bit. Right, so it's just like a lot of texture. You can see what it's like on this one. And then the last thing I did, which it's going to be very small on this paper is the tip here is I reverse fold it down and then reverse fold it forward. So it's kind of like trying to make like a little flute or the barrel of where the crossbow, arrow would launch from underneath. Just so it's like kind of like an opening here. So I just reverse fold that down and then reverse fold it back forward. Just like that. And then we're just going to valley up the sides to thin that point a little bit more. Or this could even be mimicking like the arrow that's ready, kind of pointing out of the crossbow. Right, so that's like a tiny little arrow at the tip of the crossbow. Right. And then that's all we really need for now. Once we get to wet shaping and we fold out the arm, which we'll use some of these layers to, widen the wrist a little bit like this, that's where this will then swivel into play and we'll set where exactly it will be on the arm. But for now, we can just leave it like this and move on to something else. All right, so what can we do now? I think we can start with maybe some of the shoulders. So the shoulders are underneath the arms over here, and eventually they're going to fold on top. So the structure is basically going to be, these will come on top and the arms will fit underneath. So it's a little bit weird, but this allows us to make it look like the shoulders are, surrounding the arms instead of just being on top of them. So it maybe, depending on the shaping, we'll add some more, connected look to it. But let's start with the one on the sword arm. And what we can do is we can count the points. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 4 points on this side. I think we actually have 5 on the other side, but let's start with this one first. And basically what I'm going to do is I've opened up the middle so that I can see and kind of open the flaps like this, right? And we've got 1, 2, 3. And something easy that I like to do is just stack up these points because I feel like it makes a cool shape and it kind of uses the natural structure of, this sort of flap. So we can do something by just adding like a pleat here and another one, maybe a little bit lower. Something like this to start off with. Like this, right? And then we're going to leave this one up top. That way it can be like the top of our shoulder. And if I start to just bend it like this so that it's mountain fold through the center, you can kind of see the shape we're going for already, like this. And it's a pretty simple shape, but sometimes simple is better because it's just more recognizable when there's a lot of other crazy stuff going on. And this top one, I'm not going to worry about yet. What I use that for is actually, it's going to like crimp over and inside the shoulder. So if we look at this one here, you see how it goes like inside. It really looks like it's just connected with everything. So that is what we're going to save that for. And basically we're going to wet shape it and then just put into place, but we just need it available over there. So that's kind of all you really need to do for the shoulder. And then you can kind of spot out like, okay, if we have the arm down here, what will it kind of look like? Is it kind of like this? And yeah, this is about what looks good. And then we'll probably be keeping the same hand pose. So it'll be, back like this. And what I'm noticing is actually this tip on the shoulder is too long. So we might need to shorten this, just the shoulder in general. And the way we can do that is just push everything up a little bit, right? So instead of having it all the way down low, we can push it up here and then make the rest of them follow suit like this. this. And now with these flaps, there's actually like a ton of patterns you can do for yourself. So if you want to do something more fancy than just using the points with pleats like I showed, you definitely can. You can do something like that spread squash that we did on the crossbow, and that can enable some cool patterns. You know, in the past you've seen me do square twists like square twist samurai, but there's like really an infinite amount of options you can do because there's so much room on this paper. And once it's in place, I like to kind of curve the edges like this. It's not really a full fold, but this kind of helps it stay into place even without the methyl cellulose. And just add some memory to the paper so it doesn't come undone later. And then once again, we can kind of check how it sits over the arm. And yeah, that'll give us some more space for when we shape this out. All right, so that's looking good. Let's check the other side now. So the other side, let's count our points. We got 1. This one is pretty messy actually, so just got to be aware that we might need to fix this a little bit later. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this one we have 5 points. Now, if you look at the model, I actually did something like slightly different on here. I had those pleats, but then I used the other layer underneath to kind of be a little bit wider and help to cover the arm a bit more. So yeah, it's not just all layers. So we can kind of try that, and that's with this edge one here. Instead of using this as a pleat, I think I just widen it like this. So I'm opening up the inner layers, and then on the first grid line here, I'm just gonna do mountain fold along that grid. And it's gonna add these diagonal folds on the side. And it doesn't have a full transition out. I'm just going to leave it like this so that we have the option to kind of wrap it around if we need to. Might be overkill. We might not need this, but we'll try. Okay, and then for the top part, we're gonna kind of do the same thing. This will probably curve in a bit more, but we are going to add these pleats. So I'm basically just going to try to mimic what I have on the other side. And you might be able to notice the points on this one are a lot less clean. So if you need to clean them, like sometimes I just valley fold. If the edge is sticking out, I just valley fold it underneath so you can't see it, right? So you could maybe do that if you need to. But we'll see later. Okay, so we got this. Let's fold the next one. Around here. And then we got one more. All right, so we roughly eyeballed that. Yeah, this one turned out pretty bad up here. It's like the paper is trapped, but try to smooth it out. Okay. And then I am going to add a little curve to try to get this to stay. All right, and then there is a lot going on this arm because we also have the scarf on this side. So it's gonna push into the shoulder a little bit differently than the other arm. But thankfully, the pose we're choosing is a lot simpler, so we don't have to worry about that as much. Okay, we can use this widened section here. And it'll be something like that. We have our hand down here. So yeah, as you can see, dry, it's a lot going on. But once it's wet shaped and we start, getting things solidified into place, we'll work on everything one at a time and it'll start looking really nice. We just need to get them kind of set up in order to do so. Okay, and then let's see. I think the last thing we can prep is the scarf and then the sword. Let's maybe do the sword first. Okay, so this we might have to experiment a little bit with, but we're gonna try to replicate. It might be a little bit different than my original, but yeah. All right, so let's take a look at this handle, or I mean the sword and the handle. I think what I did in my fold is, right, I just added like a pleat in there for the cross card and then just mushed it. It's not great. Let's see if we can get something a little bit better than that. So if we open up our page, we actually have this flap over here. And I don't know if this is enough to make a cross guard out of, but if we can, that'd be really cool, right? But in order to do so, I think we need to thin this whole sword first. And I think one of the things I did is kind of like a valley fold here, like this, and then some sort of squash. And the sword in the game is like half clean, half like rusted and weathered. So that was kind of the effect I was going for. In some of those layers I used, like you can see, I just did a bunch of squash folds over across. I might have actually sunk fold everything to make that texture. We don't really have to do that for this one, but if you'd like to, you can. But essentially, right, if you do something like this, where you're just valley folding a layer, you're not doing any sort of sink fold, you can spread squash at the tip like this. I'm gonna try to do it relatively clean because this is the sword. Okay, it's a little slanted. Okay, something like this, right? And then obviously like this keeps going. You can either terminate out here or like unwrap it to the other side, which is probably what I'm going to do, is just let this continue around the corner like this. And then it can terminate at the hinge where the arm is. So like here's the hinge, and it'll just be kind of one of these swivel folds like we did for the legs. Okay, so we have that done, but because we did the squash over there, we can actually now valley fold the other side, kind of in the same way, and just fold it over like this. And then this one can terminate at the hand, because that's where the swivel is hinged at, like this, right? And so we can do the same thing a few more times, just to thin out the sword. Like this. Now there's also extra layers in the handle itself. So my original thought process was to use that for some sort of detail at the bottom of the hilt. But what I didn't kind of take into account for was that if it takes more than one full grid unit, it really reduces the length of the handle. And Wylder uses kind of a 1.5 or 2-handed sword generally. So I deleted that detail to make it just look a little bit better. But if you like to get creative, you can try to do something down here. You probably will be able to like make it look ornate or something like that, or just do something a little bit simpler than what I was going to go for, and just feel it out. Okay, so we have that one done. Got another one, and you can see like the sword is very much thinning out, but what we are probably going to do is actually spread it like this way, and then see that's where we have like this half and half. And that also makes it easier at the top here, right? We're going to squash fold this in, and that's going to help make the tip of our sword. Let's try to get this pretty even. Right? Like this, and then let's valley fold upwards. Just like the leg, basically. Right. And then we kind of have more of a sword shape. I think I'll still like valley fold in the edges a little bit. So it's kind of sticking out wide in a weird way. So technically we could just stop here and call it good. Just to keep it even, I will just add this one. But we can probably just valley fold it here, squash fold. And then that's going to be fine. We don't have to fold it to the other side. Now this one, as you can see, this is connected to the structure. So I can't actually unwrap it anymore. But the way to do this is actually you valley fold it as far as you can go, and you'll see the corners starting to open up. And this is actually something where you can just do it like a square twist, where you fold the edge out like this, and the inner layer, you try to get a 45-degree valley fold down there, and it's going to open up into a square and twist, hence the name square twist. Like that. And once that's squashed down, that will let you fold this behind. Just like the rest. All right, now you see we still have like this area, and this area gets a little bit weirder to thin, but you can kind of just do a double spread squash here. So just valley fold, and then both sides will do that squash fold. This one's gonna be a little bit harder to be clean, but what I would recommend is after you do this, right, and maybe it's not clean, you just hide it, you just tuck it in underneath the other layers. And now you just have like half of it showing. And then you can try to fold the rest in like this. So you have the handle kind of goes out into the blade. And now let's see if we can add the cross guard so that it doesn't look weird like this. And that's where this flap comes in. And ideally, we can stretch it out this way, maybe. Okay, so we have the handle here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the handle and we're going to pinch it and kind of twist so that it gets thin on this side. And that way we can use the center of the blade here going up to kind of define where the handle should be. And I don't know if this flap is going to be enough for a cross guard. Maybe if it's behind. No, it looks kind of weird. Let's see if we can kind of squash it. I think it might just not be long enough to turn into anything. Let's try squashing it. Valley fold. Oh, maybe a little bit. Might take some extra creativity to get this to work. And when I mean creativity, I mean mushing. So we're just going to try to spread this layer a little bit wider to cover the top. Okay, this might actually work. So I don't know if you can see on screen the vision, right? But basically this flap, when it's squash folded, it's covering here. So we have like a small cross guard. Right now it's in the shape of a triangle, so that's kind of weird. But I think what we can do is just with some valley folds, make it more into a cross guard. But even if it's, you know, kind of weirdly triangular, it should be okay. So like basically we just need to try to hide this shape a little bit more. I'm just literally going to force it into itself. And then same thing on the top here. Just use the, thankfully this is thin paper. Just force it into itself so we get something that kind of looks like that. And then I just need to pair that in front like this. And we kind of have, yeah, I mean, I think we'll try that and we'll stick with that and we'll see if we can shape the hands around the fingers around the handle, if this is like high enough and large enough. But it's not too bad. It's a little bit small, which we may just have to grab more paper and pull it gently to make it longer. Otherwise, we'll just try what we did on the other one. But you can see how our blade is now too wide, right? So to fix that, simply, I'm just going to valley fold the blade in a little bit more so that the handle isn't as noticeably thin. That's always a trick you can do, is if it's if it needs to be longer, just make everything else thinner, right? But we have a lot of layer like distribution issues over here. So I think what I'm going to do is on this side, I'm just going to valley fold a layer over, and then we can actually do the same thing with this spread squash over here on the other side. And it will kind of help distribute some of the layers. We don't have to do all of them like what we did on the other side, or you can if you want. Maybe that'll be easier if you're using some thick paper. There's not too many. It's like 3. And I messed that one up. It doesn't look that great, but they don't have to be perfect, because we are now going to like valley fold the edges in very gently. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to reshape the tip of the sword just a little bit. It's just like a little too, or I want it to be a little bit sharper angle. Something like that. Doesn't necessarily have to go to the point, right? It can kind of be like a compound edge. Okay, like that. And then now we very gently valley fold in, and I'm not exactly going to the center. I'm just kind of eyeballing very tiny valley fold. You can get close to the center if you need a reference. And the layers will be thick enough where it'll probably just be good enough. Something like that. And do the same thing on the other side. Like that. And we actually have a pretty cool texture going on the other side of the sword. Maybe that is interesting. Now I'm just going to fix towards the tip because it's easier to have it be less symmetrical when it's really thin. So I'm just going to try to make it symmetrical. It's very tiny. Good enough for now. Okay, so we have the blade, which you can see is actually sitting a little bit too, like our thumb's here, right? So it's like held at the wrist, which is where the hinge is. But when we wrap our fingers around, hopefully it'll change. So here's the sword. Here's the handle here, which now it's a bit wider than the blade because we thinned the blade out. And then we have our handle down here. Next, we'll just need to kind of angle our fingers around it. We're going to mostly save this for the wet shaping though, because it's going to be necessary to get it to stay in the right place when we shape the fingers and wrist position to be in this over the shoulder kind of pose. But the last thing we can do is actually thin this handle a little bit more. And so I am going to just probably do big mountain fold, or maybe I'll valley fold in the edges like this on both sides, just to group the layers to the center a little bit more. Something like this. In the back, I'm going to have to do like a squash fold for this corner. Just to get it a little bit thinner from the side profile as well. And if you don't like how all the layers look stacked like this, then you can mountain fold it instead of valley fold it. But I think this is just going to add some texture. Should be fine. And then there's even like a little bit at the end where if you want, you can kind of squeeze it out into like a little pommel. Might look kind of messy, so if it's too messy, maybe not. But I think with wet shaping, we can like round this out and it'll look okay. That way there's just at least something going on. All right, so that's roughly our sword. Feel free to spend more time on that than I did if you want to make it a little bit cleaner. Okay, so let's talk about the scarf a little bit. I think we can just keep going here. So this flap is going to be the front of the scarf. Right there. And basically all I did is I pull out some of the layers here. And it doesn't have to be all the way because we want that like crumply look. And having some of the layers like this is good for doing that. It's just something like this. Something that. This one out like this. And then I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you've ever taken like a paper and folded it into until it's like really, really crumpled, and then it almost has like a cloth looking texture to it, that's kind of what we're going for here. We're not going to crumple it that much, but we want to crumple it enough so it's kind of cloth-ish, and then that will help us add in these horizontal lines where it's just going to be mostly pleats, and then you see all the layers along the side like that to get a, you know, scarf looking thing, or basically that there's folds within the crease. But the crumpling is mostly like a texture thing. All right, so I'm just kind of crumpling it randomly. You make sure you don't accidentally crumple anything that you're not supposed to crumple. Okay. Let's get this clip out of the way. All right, so now it's kind of like this, and then it doesn't even have to stay in this flap. You can like open it down and squash it a little bit because it's going to be sitting on top of the neck and on top of the armor. Right. And now that it's kind of crumpled like this, we can kind of start to find where we want to add these pleats, where I'm mainly just adding deep mountain and valley folds that kind of flow and connect to each other. But this isn't going to be the final one, because when we do wet shaping, it's probably going to get messed up. You just want like a general idea of where they'll be. So you don't have to like spend too long on this section. And then it probably won't stay too well, but it will stay once we use methyl cellulose or glue to keep it into place. All right, but generally just get that ready so that crumpled mess you know is the scarf. Now for the back of the scarf, we don't really need to crumple too much, but you can see that by spreading out all the layers like this, you can kind of get that same effect, but they're naturally going the correct direction already, so we don't need to, you know, add any other crumpling. The one thing is, to get it to wrap around the neck, we're going to use this flap, so the one that's like on top of the others, this one. We're going to pull this out and push it to face the other way, like this. So now it's pointing towards our torso, and you see how we already have some of these layers here? Basically what's going to happen is this is going to hide underneath our other scarf area and be the connection point of the scarf like this. You can kind of just like crumple it here, right? And then that's going to make the illusion that it's a scarf wrapping around. And then from here, we have all these layers now in the back, which again, I think we'll do last after we do everything else, just because when we fold the arms, it'll probably undo a lot of the wrinkles we're doing over here. But we've got two flaps, and basically you would want to just spread them out a little bit to get the effect of the cape. You can, if you want, you can do some squash folds like this just to add some texture between the pleats like this, and you kind of get extra edges. You just fold down. All sorts of stuff like that. You can just be free with it. You know what I mean? I know that's kind of scary for a lot of people, but try to just be open-minded and let the paper go where it's going to go. But again, we're going to solidify that once we do the wet shaping, because yeah, we don't have to worry about it quite yet. Okay, now, very, very last thing. is I'm actually going to grab some tweezers and we're going to look at the head because I don't want people's heads to be too big. And I think we should just narrow the chin now so that people don't start, you know, leaving their head too big. Right now, compared to the body, head is way too big. So we need the, like, that much fold. So yeah, the biggest problem I see with a lot of human folds that people make, or even people following my tutorials, is they make the head too big. And it's hard not to, because you kind of fold the head and it looks good, and then you fold everything else and then you're like, oh, suddenly it's too big. Right, so like it's like a third is where I'm folding, valley folding in. And I just start it on one side, then I start it on the other. Gently, like that. And then if it looks good, I'll pinch it and mountain fold. Just gonna tuck underneath a little bit. Just kind of get it to slide under the layer. And then reconstruct the structure. And just check if it looks good. Right, so it's a lot smaller. It angled it down a little bit, so I got to fix that. So it's like this. Make sure we have a chin. That looks good. Let's check the other side. That looks good too. All right, and I think that will be small enough for when we finish shaping. Kind of compare it to the rest of the body. Yeah, okay, I think it's looking good. And now we can get to wet shaping. But we're gonna do that in the next tutorial. So thank you for following along with the dry shaping. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. I think for me it's kind of fun because it's kind of just doodling with the paper and trying to get things, you know, slightly rendered in their basic form. And then with the wet shaping, it like solidifies it. You know, you kind of commit at that point. But yeah, all right. Thank you so much. Hopefully the wet shaping tutorial will come soon after this video, or it might already be out. So go check it out on my channel. Let me know in the comments if you made it this far, and, you know, drop a like. I'll respond to the comments as I always do. It's fun to see who's actually following along. So shout out to you for making it this far. All right. Thanks for the support. I'll see you in the next one.
All this origami, all this origami, all this origami got me going kamikaze now.